The guards never stood a chance. Not because they weren't well trained, not because the walls weren't high enough or the barbed wire wasn't sharp enough or the searchlights weren't bright enough. They never stood a chance because on the night of June 11th, 1962, they were guarding empty beds. 3 men had vanished from the most secure prison in America, a fortress built on a rock in the middle of the San Francisco Bay, surrounded by freezing waters and deadly currents. A place designed by the best minds in corrections to be absolutely, completely, and utterly escape-proof. Alcatraz. They called it the Rock. They said no one could ever escape it. They were wrong. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. What you're about to hear isn't just about 3 desperate criminals digging through concrete. This is a story about patience that would make saints weep, about ingenuity that would impress engineers, about a plan so intricate, so impossibly detailed, that it took over a year to execute and involved dozens of stolen items, fake heads made from soap and human hair, and a raft built from 50 raincoats. This is the story of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, and the escape that should have been impossible. Let me take you back to 1960. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary sits like a gray tombstone in the middle of the bay, 1.5 miles from San Francisco. If you're sent here, you've already failed at escaping from other prisons. This is the end of the line, the last stop, the place where America sends the men it can't hold anywhere else. Frank Morris arrives in January 1960. He's 34 years old with an IQ of 133, near genius level. He's been in and out of institutions since he was 13. He's escaped from prison before, multiple times. But this is different. The cell blocks are claustrophobic, each cell barely 9 feet by 5 feet. Cold concrete, a sink, a toilet, a cot. Bars so thick you'd need industrial equipment to cut through them. And beyond those bars, more bars, guard towers, walls, guns, dogs, and then the water. That freezing, churning, merciless water. The bay's currents are legendary. They can pull a grown man under in seconds. The water temperature hovers around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause hypothermia in less than 20 minutes. Even if you somehow got off the island, the odds of swimming to shore were virtually zero. The guards knew this, the warden knew this, every prisoner knew this. Alcatraz had been open for 29 years, not a single confirmed successful escape. Men had tried, 36 men in 14 separate attempts. Most were caught immediately, some were shot. 5 were listed as missing and presumed drowned. The message was clear. You don't escape from Alcatraz. You die trying, or you serve your time. Frank Morris understood this, but understanding something and accepting it are 2 very different things. Morris wasn't alone in his ambition. In the cells near him were brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, bank robbers from Florida, farm boys who'd grown up swimming in lakes and rivers. They'd tried to escape from other prisons too. They'd failed, just like Morris. But failure, when you really think about it, is just education. Here's where it gets interesting. One day, Morris noticed something small, something the guards had missed for years. The ventilation grates in the cells, those metal grills near the floor that let air circulate, they were held in place by old concrete, and that concrete, after decades of salt air from the bay, had begun to deteriorate. It was crumbling, just slightly, just enough. Morris tested it with a metal spoon from the cafeteria. The concrete flaked away like old paint. His pulse quickened. He pressed harder. More concrete fell. Behind the grate was a shaft, a utility corridor that ran behind all the cells. It was only designed for maintenance and plumbing, never meant for humans to access. But if you were desperate enough, if you were small enough, if you were willing to scrape your skin raw and dislocate your shoulders, you could fit. Morris looked at that hole and saw something the architects never intended, a door. But digging out would make noise. It would leave debris. The guards walked past multiple times a day during counts. How do you dig for months, maybe a year, without anyone noticing? This is where genius meets madness. Morris needed tools, real tools, but tools were contraband in Alcatraz, the most controlled item after weapons, so he improvised. He stole a drill bit from the prison maintenance shop during his work detail, just one, small enough to hide in his palm. He fashioned a handle from a broken vacuum cleaner part. When he needed to drill, he'd time it with the prison's noise, when the music hour played, when machines in the shop ran, when guards were changing shifts. 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there, night after night after night. The concrete around his vent slowly weighed gay. But debris was a problem. Where do you hide concrete dust in a cell inspected daily? He collected it in his pockets during the day, then scattered it in the prison yard during exercise, letting the wind carry it away. Larger chunks went down the toilet, flushed away piece by piece. Months passed. The hole grew larger. Finally, it was big enough. One night, Morris squeezed through, his heart hammering, skin scraping against rough concrete. He emerged into the utility corridor. Darkness, the smell of rust and mildew, pipes running overhead, and there, a vertical shaft leading up. He'd found the path. Now he needed companions. He recruited the Anglin brothers and another inmate, Alan West. 4 men, 4 cells, 4 holes to dig. They worked in synchronized silence, communicating through whispers in exercise yard, passing notes, developing hand signals. But here's the brilliance. They knew the guards counted inmates every night, multiple times. So how do you be in 2 places at once? They made heads. Yes, you read that right. Dummy heads. Decoys that would fool guards shining flashlights through bars at 2 a.m. Using toilet paper, soap, and concrete mixed with water, they sculpted faces, their own faces. They stole hair from the barbershop floor, their own hair clippings, and glued it to the heads strand by strand using cement glue. They painted them with flesh-toned paints stolen from art supplies, adding detail to make the skin look real. The results were disturbingly lifelike. At night, they'd place these heads on their pillows, arranging blankets to look like sleeping bodies. From the corridor in dim light, during a quick countdown, perfect. The guards would shine their flashlights, see a sleeping inmate, and move on. Meanwhile, the real inmates would be behind the walls, digging. But escaping the cell block was only step 1. They still needed to get off the island. That meant crossing the bay. That meant surviving water that had killed better swimmers. They needed a raft. Over months, they stole more than 50 raincoats from the prison laundry and other inmates. Using contact cement stolen from the glove-making shop, they glued the raincoats together, sealing the seams, creating a waterproof raft with flotation capabilities. They built wooden paddles from stolen lumber. They created life vests from the remaining coats. Every piece stolen with surgical precision, every taft timed perfectly, never too much at once, never enough to trigger suspicion. The plan crystallized. Dig out of the cells, climb the utility shaft to the roof, cross the roof to the shore, inflate the raft, paddle to Angel Island, then to the mainland. Simple, except for 100 ways it could go catastrophically wrong. June 11th, 1962. After 18 months of preparation, the night finally arrived. Evening count, all 4 men accounted for. The dummy heads worked perfectly. Guards walked past, checking each cell, seeing nothing unusual. Just sleeping prisoners. Just another quiet night on the rock. 9:30 p.m., lights out. The prison fell into its usual rhythm. Guard rotations, distant sounds of the bay, foghorns in the darkness. Morris went first. He removed the ventilation grate, now completely loose after months of work. He slipped into the utility corridor. Then the Anglin brothers followed. They moved through the darkness like shadows, climbing the vertical shaft, using pipes for leverage, pulling themselves upward toward the roof access. Alan West, the 4th man, encountered a problem. His hole wasn't quite wide enough. He dug frantically, but quietly, so quietly. Minutes passed. 10, 20, 30. The others couldn't wait. The timing was everything. High tide would help with the currents. The fog would provide cover. The guard rotation had a 30-minute window. They had to go. Now. West was left behind. Morris and the Anglins reached the roof. The San Francisco skyline glittered across the water, so close, yet impossibly far. They could see the city lights, hear the faint sounds of cars and music. Freedom, right there, just a mile and a half of freezing, deadly water away. They descended the exterior of the building using pipes and drains. They reached the shore. The raft was there, hidden weeks earlier, carefully concealed. They inflated it using accordion-style musical instruments they'd modified into makeshift bellows. The water was black, the fog thick, the current strong. They pushed off from Alcatraz Island at approximately 10 p.m. And then they vanished. The morning count revealed the impossible. 3 inmates missing, the dummy heads discovered, the holes found, the entire brilliant, audacious escape laid bare. The FBI launched one of the most intensive manhunts in American history. The bay was searched, the coastline scoured, every lead followed. Reports came in, sightings, theories, conspiracies. But Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin were never found. Not their bodies, not their raft, not a single confirmed trace. The official conclusion, they drowned. The currents took them. The cold water killed them. They're at the bottom of the San Francisco Bay, the FBI said. Case closed. But here's what keeps people awake at night. What makes this story legendary. What transforms it from a tragic failure into an enduring mystery. In the years that followed, evidence emerged, strange, tantalizing evidence. A photograph surfaced in 2015, allegedly showing the Anglin brothers in Brazil in 1975, 13 years after the escape. Facial recognition analysis? Inconclusive, but possible. A Christmas card received by the Anglin family every year for years after the escape, unsigned but with handwriting that looked suspiciously familiar. A deathbed confession from a former inmate claiming he helped them plan details never made public. A woman in Brazil who claimed John Anglin was her father, and the dates matched. The U.S. Marshals Service officially keeps the case open, even now, even 63 years later, because they've never found proof of death, only absence, only silence, only the possibility that 3 men did what everyone said was impossible. They beat the rock. They escaped from Alcatraz. The prison closed the following year, 1963. Officials never said the escape was the reason, but the timing speaks volumes. The myth of the impregnable fortress died that night in June. If 3 men with spoons and stolen raincoats could escape, what did that say about the entire system? Frank Morris would be 98 years old today. The Anglin brothers would be 92 and 93. Are they still alive? Did they make it to shore that night? Did they start new lives in South America looking over their shoulders for 60 decades? Or did the bay claim them like everyone says it did? The guards never stood a chance that night, not because the walls weren't high enough, not because they weren't vigilant enough. They never stood a chance because they were up against something prisons can't contain. The raw, undiluted human will to be free. And not, more than any wall or bar or gun or guard, is the real story behind history's most daring prison break. The question isn't whether they should have escaped. The question is, did they survive? And somewhere, in some distant corner of the world, 3 old men might be smiling, knowing the answer.